Hi, welcome to video number 2 of the 16-week postpartum program. If you are new here, my name's Sophie. I am a comprehensively certified Pilates instructor, personal trainer, as well as pregnancy and postpartum corrective exercise specialist. So if you're just finding this video and you are not postpartum or pregnant or anything like that, this is still relevant to you. Pretty much this whole series is just about deepening your core connection, core and pelvic floor. So while it's geared towards women who are recovering postpartum, it was a great thing. I went through it myself. So it is still a great thing to do. And especially diaphragmatic breathing. This is relevant to everyone. And we'll kind of get into what that is, why, as well as some exercises you can do to help reconnect back to that diaphragmatic breathing. So we'll get started by why is this important? I think that's probably the top question of why we have to do this video and understand our breathing before we get into the exercises. And the reason being is your diaphragm is a muscle just like anything else. So sitting up nice and tall, when you inhale, your diaphragm expands down. And then on your exhale, it works with your abdominals and your rib cage to exhale and get all the air out of your lungs. So couple things with that: your diaphragm, your core, your pelvic floor, they all work together. So if you're postpartum and you're working on things like diastasis recti or rib flare or pelvic floor tightness, things like that, none of them will really fully connect and come together and heal, if you will, without finalizing and correcting your breathing pattern. So getting back to that diaphragmatic breathing is really the missing puzzle piece for a lot of these things. And some women just don't even know that that's what they need to work on. And it's as easy as just kind of fixing that, and then everything else falls into place. Because if you think about your inhale and your exhale, a lot of it is pressure management through your core. So by correcting your breathing, you're correcting the pressure management, which will in turn help the way you do exercises, the way you feel pressure, and even help release some tension throughout the rest of your body, which could be contributing to chronic stress, muscle tension, like even SI joint pain, by doing these big, deep diaphragmatic breathing. And I'm not saying you're doing like this crazy deep breathing constantly throughout your day, but just teaching your body how to take a full inhale and a full exhale will actually help regulate your parasympathetic nervous system, which will have a very relaxing effect on the body, something that you might not even know is happening to you right now. So that's kind of why it's so important to start with this. And then the next thing is just recognizing. So we'll actually back up a bit and start with explaining what is happening during pregnancy and why this is something that a lot of women deal with postpartum. So, like we were discussing, the diaphragm comes down with an inhale and it comes back up with your exhale. Well, when you're pregnant and baby's in there, it's taking up all your space, and so are your organs and everything else that has had to be rearranged to make space for baby. So, definitely towards the end of your pregnancy, your diaphragm really doesn't have anywhere to go. That's why you're probably feeling really short of breath. It's not just because you're bigger or anything like that. It's truly your body is like, I can't get a nice deep breath, which is why a lot of women during pregnancy develop what's called a shallow breathing pattern. However, a side note, anyone can develop this. As I was diving into some of this information, I realized I might even have a little bit of a shallow breathing pattern. So again, if you're watching this and you're not postpartum, this is something that you can recognize in yourself potentially, but definitely when you're pregnant, you develop that because your diaphragm has nowhere to go. So you start to really breathe into your chest. You might even like try to raise your shoulders to create more space for that air to come in. And since these are all muscles in your body and you've been doing this for so long, once you have baby, a lot of times your body doesn't know how to go back to breathing the way it was. So it stays in that shallow breathing pattern where you're really breathing into your chest, you're shrugging your shoulders with inhales, and you're not really letting your diaphragm relax down just because your body kind of forgot, oh, yeah, like we can do that again. But if you're not letting your diaphragm relax, your pelvic floor is also not completely relaxing. So that's where a lot of issues come into play there. So that's why we want to work on this first, because once you have that breathing pattern, then all the exercise kind of click more and you can recognize this day to day. And it's just going to be kind of one less thing you have to worry about as you're healing and recovering. So that's why it's relevant here. But again, like I recognize this in myself. And I think for all of us who aren't postpartum, sometimes it's either stress or it's kind of this forward posture that we develop. So our head is forward, our shoulders are forward. It has a similar effect where your body can't expand properly. So you start to breathe into your chest and it can really, like, you'll find like neck tension, headaches, things like that. And you're kind of like, why am I having these? And it could just be your breathing. So that's what diaphragmatic breathing is. That's why it's important. That's what shallow breathing is and how to recognize it. If you're postpartum, I would say you probably have it, and it's just good to kind of go over these things. But if you're someone who is just watching this, maybe try to check yourself when you're sitting at your desk or walking around of like what's happening with my inhale. So now we'll get into how we reconnect back to finding our full inhale, finding that correct diaphragmatic breathing, and helping our body relearn how to take a deep breath, basically. So you'll start. This first exercise is really, really simple. It's kind of just how to giving yourself some feedback of like what's going on when I'm inhaling or exhaling. So you can be seated. I'll go ahead and sit crisscross because I know that kneeling position isn't comfortable for a lot of people. So the first thing you're going to do is just find a comfortable seated position. Crisscross is probably the best way because you're evenly on both sits bones. You can sit up nice and tall. And we're going to do two things that'll just give us a little bit of tactile feedback by using our hands to feel what's happening in your body. So bringing your hands just to either side of your rib cage gently. You're not like squeezing them or anything like that. And I just want you to find an inhale. And I'm not going to say anything to start. I want you to just do this with me and see what happens in your body. So when you're ready, you'll just find a nice big deep breath, letting it go. So I want you to think about this next one. There's a couple things that I want you to recognize in yourself if that happened to you. So when you inhale, did your shoulders rise? I'll turn to the side. Did your shoulders rise and did your stomach kind of do this sucking in thing? So when you inhale, sometimes when we're in that shallow breathing pattern, we do this stuff. So we're like, and it's kind of having the opposite effect. Like you're pulling in through your stomach, so your diaphragm's not able to come down, and we're still raising our shoulders here. So what you want to do instead, I guess I'll stay to the side, is I want you to visually think about first relaxing your shoulders so they are not going to come up with you. And then the second thing is really picturing the air coming down and out 360 degrees through your body. So you don't want to just expand through the chest. We do want a little chest expansion, but you also want it to come down into your belly. You want your rib cage to expand. You even want some expansion through your lower back as well as between your shoulder blades. So thinking of your torso like a giant canister, we're just trying to get everything to expand and then everything to close in together. So we'll do that one more time. Now that you're thinking about those things, hands to either side here, finding your inhale and exhale. So hopefully that felt a little bit better. If it didn't, sometimes it just takes practice of really picturing the air coming all the way down and all the way out. And one thing I want to mention with that before we head into our next exercise is sometimes diaphragmatic breathing can be confused with belly breathing, and they are different. And why we don't want to just focus on belly breathing, while that's helpful if you're having a hard time connecting to your abdominals and letting them relax and contract, it's helpful, but all it's doing is focusing on your abdominals. So when you're belly breathing, you're just kind of focused on that one part. You're not focused on the whole system. So this is a little bit different than that. That is a good like one-off exercise to practice if you're having a hard time connecting there, but just wanted to point out the difference with that before we head into this, because next one that gives you a little bit of feedback is going to be placing one hand on your stomach and then one hand on your back, particularly kind of like your lower mid back. And then you're going to do the same thing, trying to feel expansion out through both ways, and then exhale, feel them come back in. Again, picturing the air coming all the way down to your lower belly, to your pelvic floor, expanding through your torso, and then relaxing. So we'll sit up nice and tall, find your inhale, and exhale. So this one, I'll be transparent, really hard for me still. And I'll get into some exercise that I've continuously done that help me kind of find, especially the back expansion. I have a really hard time with finding the expansion in my back. So there are going to be some exercises we'll get into in a moment here that'll help with that. But if you felt that expansion, that's great. And if you didn't, again, it just takes practice and it takes kind of putting this mind-body connection to it. I would suggest doing like 5 to 10 of these exercises each day. So the rib cage, hand front, hand back, and then we'll go into some lateral work here as well. So sometimes the problem is you're having a hard time expanding through the side of the body, your rib cage. You have tiny muscles between your ribs called your intercostal muscles, and they are super important for that inhale, but sometimes they're really tight, especially again, pregnancy makes them kind of really tight. It kind of adjusts your rib cage. And if you're someone who has a rib flare because pregnancy kind of widened them, this breathing pattern is going to be so, so good. I have a separate video on rib flare specifically that I can link down below. But this is really going to help with that, because if you stay in that shallow breathing pattern, your ribs are really like doing what they're supposed to, and they're not going to pull back in and down. So complete side note, but anyway, sometimes you have to find expansion through your rib cage and loosen them up for them to be able to work during your inhale. So for this one, again, seated position. If you can bring your forearm all the way down to the mat, that's great, but I want you to focus on keeping the opposite hip grounded. So we're not lifting up here. If you can only get to here and keep the hip grounded, go for that. So find that range of motion that works for you, and then opposite arm comes all the way overhead. Really feel that nice side body stretch through the ribs, opening up here. And then you'll find your inhale focusing on the air coming into the ribs and all the way down into your hips. So big inhale here. And exhale. Good. So hopefully you could feel that expansion through the side of the body here. We'll do same thing other side, lifting all the way up, keeping your opposite hip grounded. Find your big inhale into the ribs, into the side of the body. And exhale. And then coming back up. So you can do those. You can alternate sides. You can stay on one side and feel it start to really loosen up. You might notice if one side feels better than the other. Maybe if your right side felt better, try to do a couple more reps on your left side until they're starting to feel pretty even. So again, this one really good for starting to open up the side of the body, because sometimes it's just that you're tight, so that your body's not really doing what it's supposed to. So by mobilizing and stretching and opening up and really focusing on getting that air there, it should help to loosen things up and allow your body to start breathing like that again. And then for me, my personal favorites are the ones that help with your back expansion and help really get that air into the back of the body. So the first one we'll do for that is going to be reaching both arms up overhead. You will be sitting cross-legged for this one, and then you're going to twist. So right hand will come to the outside of your left knee, and then really press your right hand into your knee so that you feel this nice stretch underneath your shoulder blade here. So you're almost kind of rounding through the back to feel that open up here. And then maintaining this position, you want to find your inhale and focus on the air coming all the way to the back of this right side of your back here. So for me, excuse me, and hopefully for you, you're allowing your body to kind of feel that stretch and that opening, and then it helps you kind of feel the air expand into your back and close out. It's much harder to do for whatever reason when you're sitting up tall and your back is kind of engaged and keeping you upright. It is harder to find that expansion, so these stretches will really help. So we'll come other side, same thing, really pulling on your knee, feeling the stretch underneath your shoulder blade. Tiny rounding through your back. You'll inhale, exhale, let it go. So you can almost feel the stretch deepen as you inhale because it's stretching out through your back and then letting it go. So that's a really good one to help with your upper back here. And then for mid lower back, we'll find a child's pose position. If you are newly postpartum, like 6 weeks, if you're doing this, chronologically, you can use either a towel, or if you have a little, like the squishy exercise ball, you can place that on your belly if you don't feel supported yet to go into a child's pose, or a pillow. You can place something there to kind of help support you as you bend over. It's not going to do anything harmful to you, but sometimes it just feels funky when your core is like not fully there yet to kind of go into a child's pose. It feels kind of weird. So you can always place something right there to support you with this. But coming into your child's pose, hands are reaching long. So again, you really want to find this opposition. So your tailbone sits heavy against your feet, and then your hands are reaching long in the opposite direction. Really let your neck relax, and then finding a little bit of a rounding through your spine, but you're not engaging your abdominals. Everything is loose, everything is relaxed. We're finding our inhale, picturing the air coming all the way into your mid to lower back here. So big inhale. And exhale. So again, hopefully that one kind of helps you feel the expansion in your back. It creates more space for the air to come all the way down there. And then doing these day by day is going to help your body relearn how to take that big deep breath. It's moving all these muscles again. It's releasing that tension that was being stored there, and it's allowing your diaphragm to fully expand as well as contract. Another thing to mention with this is, like we kind of said at the beginning, your diaphragm works with your rib cage and your abdominals. So this will also start to feel a little bit easier as you start to strengthen your core throughout the program, just because your core is not fully healed, fully there yet. And so sometimes it might feel like a little bit harder to get that exhale, to get all that air out of your lungs. Don't worry about that. That's what this whole program is for. But having this breathing, doing these exercises throughout the program, and forever, really. Like I even still do these exercises because it's so easy in our day-to-day life to get stuck in that shallow breathing pattern, whether it be from stress or posture or pregnancy or whatever it might be. It's really easy to get stuck in that. So these are some really great exercises that you can do to help you get through that. So again, it was the rib cage, front to back, side to side, and then we take the twist for the upper back, and then child's pose for mid lower back. There are some other ones you can do as well that we might get into later on. But one other one actually that I'm now thinking of that's really good because your pelvic floor and your diaphragm are connected, right? So sitting up tall, again, find a crisscross pose because I think that's a little bit better for the knees and to be evenly on both sits bones. Picturing the air coming all the way down to that lower belly pelvic floor. No matter like nothing else is going on, you're just sitting up nice and tall. We're just picturing the air coming all the way down and out and then exhaling coming all the way back in, especially if you're someone that is specifically dealing with, pelvic floor tightness. This is an exercise that's really going to help with that. This breathing pattern is really going to help with that because sometimes it's just that chronic stress of storing tension in your body. The pressure isn't being managed properly and it's leading to those types of things. So I know all of this was a lot of information. Rewatch this video as many times as you would like to kind of get a better understanding of it. I also don't want it to feel discouraging because some of this is really hard to do at first. And again, it's a retraining of your body. So it takes a lot of mind body connection. It takes very intentional breathing and intentional movement to get back to that place. If it comes easily to you, that's amazing. But if it doesn't, don't feel discouraged. And then the last thing I'll add that is kind of just super relevant to early pregnancy in general is if you feel like you really can't understand these things. I wish I could be there with you, but I'm not. And having a pelvic floor physical therapist or someone who specializes in pregnancy and postpartum in person is a really great thing. If you're local, reach out to me. I would love to work with you in person, but if not, definitely finding a professional that can help you, that can look at you move and can kind of just work through some of those things with you in person is never a bad idea to invest in that, even if it's just 1 to 2 sessions to kind of get you going because it's not clicking for you on your own. There is no shame in that. And it's something that I actually very much so encourage, especially if it's not feeling right. So that's diaphragmatic breathing. This is your second step. Next up is going to be week 7. So starting to kind of really get into some of the workouts once you are cleared. Very exciting. And I'll see you then. Thanks for moving with me.